I woke up one morning and I had had a dream just before I woke up, and it was a stage and it had a brass bed on a porch, and an older woman, a black woman, comes in with a hacksaw and she attacks the bed. And I went, what? What's this all about? So I just wrote it, filled in novel form, and that was Nandria's War. Chapter 16. The days had droned into weeks. Will's hip and flank were healing despite the constant irritation of physical work. Nandria watched and nursed, but could not convince him to do what she knew the nurses, the Canadian sisters, would have advised. It was all tied up with his standing in his father's eyes, and that he would not compromise, despite his pain. Nandria found that she'd expected things to be different once Will was with her, but the farm consumed them all. Spring was a busy time, the all-out effort time, and for each of the Minnecks, the days were demanding and routine. The nights, unfortunately, held their own joy, even if only as two aching, tired people lay at peace with the world in each other's arms. It was a long time and a short time until the eve of Pastor Kiley's coming. Rising from the sofa where he'd sat beside his mother, taking in her excitement at the pastor's visit scheduled for after church the next day, none too soon for her, his mother sat and let Will hold her hands in his for a moment. "You are a pretty lady, Mrs. Doris Minnick," he told her. He smiled to see even deeper blush come to her cheeks. She was a lovely woman, more handsome than pretty in her day, but with the green eyes and perked little mouth remaining among the deeper wrinkles, she was like the doll she had set in Winfield's crib, that Minnick himself caught sight of and banished to the trash heap for the next Saturday's burning. But Will remembered how much she had wanted a baby girl, how much she had needed a woman companion. She'd had so little of that. No wonder she had loved the quilting bees, despite hating to sew. "I have a pretty lady too, and I don't want to neglect her," he whispered to his mother, and he left her and went out to the kitchen. The kitchen was tidy, but no Nandria. The tiny sponge marks on the floor caused him to lift one foot and study where she and his mother had spent Thursday evening and much of Thursday night, and on into Friday morning on their knees, dipping small squares of cut sponge into paint and pressing the marks into the plain dark linoleum. The pattern near the sink was random, decorative. As both women had tired, the pattern followed more nearly the arcs of their arms, reaching to spread out rather than crawling forward on aching kneecaps. Still, the overall effect was fancier than the plain dark linoleum had been, and that was important to his mother. A beautiful love gift of participation from his wife. Doris Minnick had wanted to show the pastor the Minnick best. "Nan," Will called softly, a phrase that she had just set the baby down to sleep. Gingerly he stepped across the crudely highlighted floor that no one had been allowed to trespass upon until Doris had been sure the floor was thoroughly dry. He slipped to the porch to check on his wife and infant. Rose was there, sleeping in her crib, with a smile that wrenched his heart. She was growing so fast. He'd need to bring down Winfield's full-size crib from the attic room if they stayed. Maybe that's why he'd thought of that stupid doll. No Nandria. With a kiss from his fingertips to his daughter's soft cheek, Will stepped to the outside door to peer into the yard. And there she was, outlined by brilliant oranges and red, dramatized by roiling gray-black clouds. His beautiful, composed, competent wife, Nandria, with an axe raised over her head, dashing in zigzag chase after panicked chickens. Hens flapped and fluttered. Feathers fanned and fell in spilled spirals. Clucking chaos, frantic frenzy. Nandria, the lovely, the calmly dignified, the unflappable, reduced to bedlam fodder, face glistening, eyes mad with focus on squawking, unmeetably fleeting goals. Will stopped, his lips still formed in the unspoken praise for good supper, honey. He stared at the riotous backyard and had to duck as a terrified hen flew low and ricocheted off one wide window of the porch. It thudded and rattled the glass and raised a heavy bird's cries to screeching. Nandria, he called, and then again louder. But this time her name was distorted by the beginnings of his laughter. Carefully he entered the fray, finally intercepting her and holding her by the wrists, trying to bring her to him to stop and to calm her without falling prey to the honed edge of that axe. "Bunny duck," he whispered into her hair. "Nandria, honey," he cooed, dancing with her frantic movements, trying to calm her, to slow her, to stop her in his arms. "Easy, love." And when he had her nearly still and looking at him as though she knew him, he took the weapon from her and let it drop at their feet. "You can't let them see the axe, silly lady." "Oh, Will," she gasped, both shaken and chagrined. "I thought," she panted, "I thought at sunset they'd be ready to roost and easy to catch." She stared up at him, a failure and a disappointment to someone. She hated to disappoint anyone. "And just why do you think you need a chicken so desperately? It's Saturday night." He shook his head, still holding her, now for the joy of feeling her close against him. "And that pastor's coming tomorrow, and your mother says the chickens must be slow roasted." "Ah, Kylie, yes," Will agreed, but not agreeing with his mother's assessment of the men. "Mama wants so much to impress him, and she did roast her chickens slowly, as I remember. No time to do that in the morning before we set off for church, as I take it." Nandria shook her head. "And no chance Mama will let you stay home to fix the meal. She'll want us all sitting up front, posing in front of everyone, as though it were no trick at all to put on a fancy feast." Will stroked his wife's cheek and kissed the tip of her nose. "Here, let me do the dastardly deed for you," he offered as they watched the frantic chickens slowly settle. Many were finding their way back toward the asylum of the coop. He gave her a small shove toward the swing dangling from the elm tree, nodding for her to go and sit down. With a gentle, herding technique, followed at the last moment by a dash and a lunge, Will caught one hen and crossed the yard to pick up the axe in his other hand. He carried the flapping fowl upside down by the legs to a crude, weathered, and stained stand, not much deeper than a sawhorse. With a flick of a wrist, he laid the chicken so her neck was between two nails, hammered only partway into the wood. They served to hold her from moving side to side, and as she struggled, also served to help along and aid her neck. Before she could think to lift her head and neck up away from the confining nails, Will had head and neck severed with a decisive blow of the axe. He hung her body by the legs from the clothesline and went in search of a second victim for Sunday dinner, and then, knowing the pastor's appetite, a third. Nandria had slumped, exhausted, to sit in the swing to watch his sure movements and to recover her own equilibrium. While she concentrated on the dynamics of his stroke to accomplish the dastardly deed with at least suffering for the poor chicken and least likely to need a second blow, the first hen, writhing, slipped out of her leg bindings and fell to the grass. Without its head, it ran in blind circles around Nandria. Shuddering and sucking air, Nandria raised her hands to cover her face, but she could not block out the scene. Will set the axe atop the chopping block and hurried to crouch beside his wife. "It's all right, love." He drew her into his arms to comfort her. She had seen too much war, too much maiming of humans he had not been able to keep her from experiencing. He tried to remind her that these were farm animals raised for slaughter. He appealed to her reason. It's just nervous connections, brain to muscles that haven't died yet. It'll be over soon. When he was sure she had control of herself again, he rose, chased down the headless hen, and tied it again to the clothesline. Wiping his hands along the thighs of his overalls, he went to sit beside Nandria. "It's what happens on a farm. You'll get used to it. Or then, no, you won't. We won't be here that long."